welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John. As always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you tonight. Let's do it. What's something you've seen with your own eyes that you still cannot explain? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And subscribe. One morning I was getting ready for work. I'm an EMT, and at the time I was working a 24-hour shift with roughly an hour commute. As I was throwing my uniform on at about 10 minutes to 4 a.m., I heard this voice as firm as conviction say in my head, "Stay home." Now I thought, no way, it's within an hour of my shift. I'm not that person. So I get driving to work a few minutes later, and as I'm pulling toward an intersection where I could pick my route, there were multiple routes to this station, and I rotated them often. The voice boomed again, "Take the back way." Again, I think, no, I'm running short on time. If I do that, I'll for sure be late. Finally, I get stopped in traffic on a rural highway. There's 3 cars ahead of me, and a vehicle I can't quite make out crashed into something I also can't make out. Just as I think I should pull over and go see what's up, I hear the voice louder than it was the last 2 times. "Turn around." That voice hit my brain like a firecracker, and I went, alright, something really bad must be over there. I'm going to listen this time. Called my dispatch to let them know I'd be late and whipped the car around as fast as I could. Turned out that car I couldn't make out was a truck I knew very well. It was my best friend's truck, with him dead inside of it, after he had crashed into a power pole doing about 75, with power lines down around the truck that would have been impossible to see given the outside conditions. Had I stopped, I would have recognized his truck and naturally tried to pull him out. If I had done that, I would have been electrocuted and died right next to him. Now, remember what time I said I heard the voice? 10 to 4, or about 3:50? We pieced together from his phone's text history that he died at 3:49. I'm legitimately convinced I accidentally traveled in between dimensions. Well, I don't know what it was, but this is some weird shit that happened to me that I can't explain at all. Didn't mean to write a book, it just confuses the hell out of me every time I think about it. The short story is that Dairy Queen is a portal to another dimension. My girlfriend and I went on a road trip. We wanted a snack on the way home, and we saw the next exit had a Dairy Queen. So we get off the exit, go down the road a little bit, and there's a Sonic to our right on the corner of the upcoming intersection. We pass the Sonic and turn right to head to DQ on the left side of the adjacent road. It's a very small rundown building in a crappy little lot with no cars and only one employee inside. This DQ was very odd from the start. They didn't have much on the menu. They didn't have burgers, they didn't have chicken, they didn't even have ice cream. So it was already a weird experience. Something felt really off with that place. We get a hot dog, fries, and a drink without ice. Surprise. They didn't have any. We head back to the interstate exactly the way we came. We turned left at the Sonic we passed earlier and headed straight down that road. But we somehow couldn't find the interstate. So, we put where we were heading in the maps, and it takes us on some crazy detour that didn't make any sense. We end up coming out to the same road DQ was on, but from the opposite direction. So DQ should be on our right now. Sonic was up ahead on the left side of the road, where we originally turned off to get DQ. Right before we got to the intersection, it hit us. I said, "Wait, did you see the DQ back there?" She said, "No, did you?" I thought we were just tired and losing our minds, but we were pretty sure it was not there anymore. So we turned around to confirm. We kept getting closer to it and closer and closer, and where the hell did the Dairy Queen go? It just vanished in the 10 minutes it took to leave the DQ parking lot and drive around in a big circle. The same crappy little square lot that was there, but empty. The Sonic was there, the car dealership was there, the other businesses were there, and everything else was there. But the DQ building simply did not exist anymore. I mean, we were absolutely positive it was supposed to be in that lot. Well, after pulling over at the Sonic and freaking the hell out for a few minutes, we head back to the interstate again on the same road beside Sonic. This time, the on-ramp to the interstate is there, so we start heading home. We traveled on the interstate for a few miles. Then we passed the same exit we just left, which is unexplainable. But to add to that, there's no Dairy Queen on the roadside, like where we passed it the first time. I don't know if Dairy Queen drugged us or what, but I've never experienced any feeling like that in my life after we realized what happened, and probably never will again. I mean, we were trying to make sense of it the whole way home, and weeks after, I've tried so hard to make logical sense of it, and there was just absolutely nothing logical about it. We even traveled back that way again multiple times, and there was still no Dairy Queen anywhere around that exit. And the town or country had some weird name I can't remember that was related to space or to the universe. 2004, Baghdad, Iraq. I preface by saying I am not a religious person. I was a gunner in a convoy. We had explicit orders to not stand in the gun unless actively firing. I was sitting on the gunner's strap on the way back from the mission. I never stood up in the gun. Too many risks. On the road, on a very active route, something in my head told me to stand up. Looking back, it really feels like a voice. I stood up. At that moment, I was enveloped in a bright white light and then was knocked out. It ended up being a vehicle-borne IED, suicide bomber. Shrapnel the size of a Doritos chip hit my right arm and destroyed my humerus. Almost lost an arm that day. Had I been sitting, that shrapnel would have hit my neck head area. That voice saved my life. To this day, I can't understand it. My mom mentioned that she'd never traveled internationally. I reminded her that the trip we took to Canada counts. She insisted we'd never been to Canada. I was confused and said yes, we did when I was little. We went with Uncle. I reminded her how we drove through Michigan and there was a bridge she was terrified of. She cut the conversation off and so did I. Later she asked me in an agitated way how I knew about the trip. I told her I was old enough to remember. She tells me that's not simply possible because she was pregnant with me during that trip, but I was not born. That was the one and only time she went to Canada with my uncle. There were no pictures, nothing, but I described to her what she wore, what type of bridge it was, and what the truck looked like. Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you tonight. Let's do it. What's something you've seen with your own eyes that you still cannot explain? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And subscribe. I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and for some reason I had this urge to go for a walk around 8-ish at night. I'm walking around the neighborhood, but being mindful of how nice the sky looked that night. Such a beautiful, clear night, and the temperature was just perfect. Then I saw 2 streaks of red light in the sky, like when the Enterprise goes into warp speed and leaves a trail. They were perfectly symmetrical, and created 2 perfect red trail lines in the sky, flying away from the direction I was walking. It took me by surprise because they looked like 2 solid lasers that slowly disappeared. Suddenly, out of nowhere, 2 fighter jets blasted through the sky in the direction of the lights, followed by 2 Black Hawks going in the same direction. I paused, wondering what the hell I just saw. I watched for a bit, but ended up heading home after a while, when everything seemed to settle down again. To this day, I have no idea what I saw. I went to see a friend who lives in another city. I took a bus and had a backpack. I had my sunglasses with me. Last I remember, They were on the table at my friend's. 3 days later, I'm looking for my sunglasses. My husband, who is way better at looking for stuff than me, looked too. We emptied the backpack, checked the pockets. We even looked around the house, although I hadn't used them since my trip. I assumed I had left them at my friend's. I asked, and she said no. Maybe I left them on the bus. I was sad, but what can you do? 2 days later, walk into the bedroom, and there, on the bed, right where my sleeping ass had been not 1 hour ago, and where we had slept every night, the sunglasses. My husband swears it wasn't him, and I believe him, because the look on his face when we saw them can't be faked. I was spending a summer with my uncle who lives about an hour's drive north of Sudbury on a large private property. It was nearly midnight when we saw headlights flashing through the living room window. It was coming from across a field from inside the forest. My uncle grabbed his flashlight and rifle and walked out across the field to see what was going on. His closest neighbor was about a 15-minute drive away, and he knew everyone within the 75 or so square kilometers he lives in. Whoever was in the woods was either not a local or knew they shouldn't be there. I was watching from the front porch, but you could very clearly hear that whatever vehicle was in there was a large vehicle with a loud engine. That, coupled with the power of the headlights, meant this was not a motorcycle or an ATV. This was certainly something like a truck. Not that any of that would matter, and I'll explain why in a second. As my uncle makes it halfway through the field, the headlights go out, and about 30 seconds later, the engine turns off. Eventually, he gets to the tree line and starts calling out for someone to identify themselves and flashing the flashlight into the woods. Nobody answers. My uncle looks around for maybe 10 minutes or more before saying he's calling the police and walks back across the field to the house. I'm watching all this go down from across the field. He gets inside and calls the police. Then I go to bed while he waits for the police and makes a report. The next morning, the same officer came back. My uncle pretty much knew everyone at the local police station. Everyone in that area did. And we all started doing a search of the forest surrounding the property. We couldn't find anything at all, and we just had to move on. Nothing ever happened, but the reason why this is unsettling is that there were no roads in the forest, and you couldn't drive a motorcycle through the density, let alone anything else. The only way to get into that forest from the road was through my uncle's field, which had a locked gate. You would either have had to get the vehicle through the field without any noticing, which the living room has a clear view of, and we always had the blinds open so we could see who was coming up the driveway, and get through the tree line, which was impossible, or drive it through the tree line somewhere else, which was hundreds of square kilometers of nothing but dense forest. It's been years, and we've never gotten to an explanation on what was in those trees and who put it there. I was on the computer one day at my mom's house alone. It was a normal summer day and I wasn't doing anything in particular, just scrolling through Tumblr. This was about 10 years ago, lol. All of a sudden I felt some wind go past me like someone literally ran behind me. The crazy thing was, no windows were open, and I only felt the wind on my back, not my neck or head, just my back, like a small child had run behind me. I was so shook that I just froze for a second, turned the computer off, and slowly walked to my room and started watching TV. I don't know why I reacted that way, but I didn't feel fear, more so like but a strange calmness. I didn't tell my mom for years because I knew she'd freak out, but I also just never could explain what I felt. It didn't feel sinister though. It just felt like something was there and then gone. Another instance, I was walking up to get to the train platform, coming from my mom's job, just visiting and whatnot. I was walking up the stairs of the Brown Line at LaSalle Van Buren. I remember this as clear as day because I felt like I was in a scene from a horror movie. I only walked up the first set of stairs from the street and that's when I saw him. It was a man with so much anger in his eyes. He looked like he just lost everything and wanted to take it out on the first person he saw. Or maybe, drugs, but he was in a business suit. So I figured he must have had a really bad day at work. He was at the top of the first set of stairs from the opposite side, and we locked eyes from each side. Tell me why this man starts walking fast towards me and starts following me toward the second set of stairs to get to the platform. I noticed his stride speed up to a run. This man is chasing me on the mid-level of the steps. I hit a right fast and started to run a little bit too, so I could gain speed and start skipping the next set of steps. As soon as I'm about to take my first leap over 3 steps, there's this man in all white t-shirt, white shorts, white shoes, and I'm not even lying. He prevented me from going up the stairs because he was coming down from the train, and he was also a pretty large guy, so it was nearly impossible to go around. I looked up and saw a kind smile, and that's all he did. I turned around to make contact with the man following me, and saw him notice the man in white. When I tell you that anger turned into pure fear that I've never seen on a grown man's face before, I kept my eyes on him like, yeah, I got witnesses now. I didn't say this, I just made sure he knew what I was saying to him telepathically, lol. Then the man chasing me slowly backed away and literally ran down the stairs. Now here's where things get freaky. I went to turn around to thank the man in white tremendously, and he was just gone. I looked over the edge of the stairs, gone. He couldn't have walked away without me seeing him. I just chalk it up and say I had a guardian angel that day. I was walking back to my apartment late at night after an odd shift. I heard a man start going, "Hey ma'am, excuse me ma'am." I put my head down and started power walking to the lobby door as one does when a strange man tries to get your attention in a parking lot at 2 a.m. "Hey ma'am, I don't want to bother you, but do you see that?" I turned around and there was just an orange glowing orb floating still above the train tracks behind my complex. He's staring. I'm staring. I see that. This was before drones were in the hands of consumers, and it was completely silent, completely still. It just fades, and I don't remember going into my apartment, and I never talked to that man again. Honestly, I'm mostly shocked by how little I reacted. I'm usually a happy southern lady who loves talking to strangers. I didn't feel the need to take my phone out to figure out what it was. I just stared, and then left when it was gone. Long post alert. I technically didn't see it, as I'm blind, but my mom and stepdad did. This happened about 10 years ago, and I'm still confused to this day. One Christmas Eve, my mom, soon-to-be stepdad, and I were in the kitchen listening to a carol concert on the radio and playing darts. Well, to be totally accurate, they were playing darts. Stepdad was talking about how it was going to be his first Christmas without his mom and how hard it was, yet how lucky he felt to have met my mom and fallen in love with her during what was otherwise one of the hardest years of his life. To try to lighten the mood somewhat, he then said something along the lines of, "If you're watching me from up there, Mom, give me a sign." He then threw a perfect dart for the first time all night. It hit the bullseye, struggled to make a purchase before falling off the board and vanishing. He and Mum both saw it hit the ground, but when he bent to retrieve it, it was nowhere to be found. We checked the whole room from top to bottom and found nothing. We've since had the room completely emptied and stripped of all furnishings to make way for a new kitchen and still no sign. I have no idea where on earth that dart went, and it's something that makes me scratch my head to this day. I have a connection with the people who own and operate the historical Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Waverly Hills, Kentucky. A decade ago, a group of friends and I were on our way home from a spring convention, and we decided to pop in to visit. It was the middle of the day, and the entire property was covered in cameras from the bottom of the mountain to the top to stop people from breaking in. There were 5 of us on the property, plus the 2 owners, sitting in the home on the site with the CCTV. We went out and did a quick walk around the building to show it off to the people in our group who had never been. It's one of the most haunted places in the Midwest, and its historical tours are incredible. It's been on every single ghost hunting show imaginable, but I'd never had any significant experiences there before beyond hearing odd noises. I'm a skeptic overall, and I just don't think I'm the kind of person who is close enough to the veil to experience the paranormal, but I can appreciate it even if nothing really ever happens to me. I had a manga doodle in my car, one of those kids' toys, and we decided to bring it with us and leave it in the old electroshock therapy room while we were on our wander about, since it's one of the rooms with a lot of activity. We left it lying blank, with the magnet pencil on its side, and walked out. I thankfully took a photo of the layout before we walked out. We wandered around, never out of each other's sight, all the way up to the roof, down the tunnel, and back to the owner's home. It took a few hours. We were the only people on the property, confirmed by CCTV footage. We went to get ready to leave, and I remembered the magnet doodle. I'd been about to drive off without it. We went back to the house, checked in, and went back inside to grab it. When we walked into the room, we were all silent. The pen had been moved, set on top of the pad, and the doodle pad was scribbled all over with what looked maybe like the word "what." We took pictures of what had happened and walked back to the house. They brushed through the footage again to confirm that we were all absolutely the only people on the property. I had no explanation for how it happened. The way it was written wasn't an accident. To this day, it's without a doubt one of the weirdest experiences I'd ever had in that building, bar none. I do have a photo down a hallway that was empty at the time with the figure standing there, but that's the only other spooky thing that's happened to me directly there. When I was younger, I went from being raised Christian to becoming an atheist. How could anyone, God, be the right God, leaving all other worshippers out of luck? Towards the end of college, I had a spiritual awakening of sorts, basically an experience of nirvana. That experience didn't show me that God or ghosts were real, but I did become aware that anything was possible, and I had no better reason to not believe in spirits and ghosts than I had to believe in them or something like this. Fast forward a few months, I was visiting an extended family vacation home that had been in my family for several generations. Lots of ghost stories in that house. It was my first time going there alone. I went to write and do some personal reflection. It was very late at night. No storms, no wind, no open windows, no drugs or alcohol. I was in a room that had shelves lined with old black and white photos of family members over the ages sitting there. I remembered how scared I used to be of ghosts in that house as a kid. I thought I could feel them and often ran out of the room quickly after being alone in them. That night, I considered the possibility that there in fact could be ghosts in the house, and if so, they must not be bad spirits, because nothing bad ever came from it. I was open to the possibility. I had the thought, maybe I could see about this. Maybe I could ask the house or the spirits if they were there. So I did. I closed my eyes, quieted my mind, and asked, "Are there any spirits here?" The actual microsecond that my mind focused on the question, there was a loud smack. One of the old black and white photos had literally leapt off the shelf and landed 12 feet out on the floor, face down, in the middle of the room. My 15-year-old son and I were standing on our front porch one dark evening casually talking when we both noticed a woman jogging toward us right to left on our side of the street. She was not familiar to us. She was dressed in a running outfit and was passing in front of my neighbor's house. Between her and us was my neighbor's front yard tree, which was at most 3 feet in diameter and maybe 100 feet from where we stood. We both watched her jog behind the tree, and she did not reappear on our side of it. Both of us saw this at the same time and immediately stopped talking. Staring at the tree, my son asked if I saw her. I said, yeah, I did. We looked at each other and back to the tree, thinking maybe she had snuck up behind the tree. Then, we thought maybe she turned up our neighbor's driveway, but we would 100% have seen her do either of those things. We crossed the driveway to our neighbor's front yard and approached the tree from opposite sides. She was nowhere to be found, just disappeared. We were immediately creeped out. We compared notes: running outfit, black and white top, solid black bottoms, blonde hair and a ponytail, white running shoes, running casually up the street. We had seen the exact same person. We still talk about it to this day.